Welcome to the Glassworking shop. Well, I'm continuing to work on this murrini assembly, and the glasswork is actually going pretty well. The videos, I've been working on my new camera setup and my new camera and trying to optimize everything, so the last video had some exposure problems, but hopefully that's corrected in this one. So little bit by little bit, glasswork is very hard to photograph. Even with a proper didymium filter, it's still tricky to get the exposure right, and in post-processing and editing to try to do whatever you can to kind of like tweak it to make it visible. So anyway, I continue to work on it. The piece is, here's a still photograph showing how the pieces that I made yesterday, the triangle pieces, I cut them into 4 pieces and stuck them together in the assembly fixture, tied it with stainless wire, and then put it into the kiln for preheating. So I've made some punties ahead of time because it's pretty boring watching me make punties, and now I'm going to take it out of the kiln, heat up a punty, stick it on the end, squeeze it together, and kind of round it up to make a round thing out of a square thing. So here we go. This is a really cool little electronic igniter thing. I think it's called a candle lighter or something like that, but works really well for glassworking torches. So this guy's been preheating in the kiln. So it should be almost up to temperature. Get my special forky tool. It's really nice to have a shop where I can make any tool I need. Well, almost any tool I need. Just a kind of a side comment about machines and machine shops, that people look at the tools I have and say, oh, you can make anything. Well, no, I can't make anything. I can make what my tools allow me to make, which is pretty good. I mean, the tools are powerful, but part of the trick of designing the stuff I design is to figure out how to make it with the tools I have. So now I'm preheating the end of this piece, and I'm going to be welding on a couple of dots. I don't think it's really necessary because the geometry of the piece kind of guarantees that when I hit it with that hot punty that all will be well. But still, you know, it doesn't hurt. So now that this guy is preheated, I'm gonna switch to double-handed work. I want to get the punty really, really hot. Get my workpiece just barely hot enough to stick. try to preserve as much of the pattern as I can. I was aiming for a little bit more usable yield out of my pull. Okay, so it's stuck in the fixture a little bit, but we have the technology to fix that. So there we go. And now, what I need to do now, without delay, to get the other end more or less stuck together. Just get a couple of dots on it. Because my weld is getting cold. And I need to get this guy in the fire. So the stainless wires have done their job, and it's time to get them out of here. This is when the piece is the most unstable. And it looks like I've got some dust on the surfaces. So I'm concentrating my heat. Let me get this guy off to the side. Concentrating my heat on that weld because it wasn't like the world's greatest weld. So now just kind of slowly soaking some heat into it. As soon as I get the first squeeze out of the way, I'll be a lot happier because the first squeeze is going to kind of consolidate the thing, kind of tag it together and increase the stability dramatically. So I'm operating, for those who don't already know everything about the NQALHA, I'm operating the NQALHA with the twist axis locked off because I'm just kind of like moving around in and out of the flame, trying to even out the heat, but I don't want to have to take control of the machine. So you can see I'm pretty much just moving with two fingers. One of the nice things about the new software modes introduced quite a long time ago in version 2, where I allowed the ability to lock off the twist axis. So now I'm switching to handwork, and this is also a somewhat tricky part of the operation. I'm trying to get enough heat into the piece that it'll tag together and consolidate, but it's still pretty unstable, and there's always the risk of the whole thing kind of blooming apart. Of course, with thick triangles, there's less risk. So over to the squeezer, and that was an unfortunate guess. I was using the fixed size dies, and I selected the wrong size, which gives a nice opportunity to say, hey, but I can just put the piece on the assistant, let the assistant take over while I correct my little error. Not much of an error, but still. I'm trying, the reason I didn't use iris dies on this piece is that I want to get kind of the perpendicular motion without sliding. I don't want to, at this point in the construction of the assembly, I'm a little bit concerned about distortion, so I really didn't want sliding at this moment. So now, yeah, there we go. Of course, I made my moil a little bit too big, but hey, no problem. We can make that smaller. I like having a big moil because when I go to pull this thing, I find that a big moil gives me more control and allows me to put more heat into the end and avoid creating a giant knuckle. I'm kind of knocking the corners off of the oversized moil. And yeah, you know, if I had guessed better and made my punty the right size, I wouldn't have to do the remedial work, but oh well. If it was easy, I'd be bored by now. Okay, so I've got the moil under control. Let's let this, notice that I momentarily stop the rotation, let it fall back on center. When the project was first designed, the thought was that using the foot pedal for pause and reverse would be a good way to get the glass piece back on center, but it turns out that really doesn't work that well. Surprisingly enough, it doesn't work that well, and that the best way to get it back on center is to just momentarily stop the motion. So, just trying to let it hang out in the far flame. Try to build, now that it's consolidated and tagged, and I've got a little more confidence that the stability has improved, kind of like letting it hang out in the far flame, the delta mag flame, and just trying to build some core heat as I try squeezing the triangles together and driving out the air. You notice that on the far end, I only put a couple of dots. I didn't weld everything together on the far end so the air would have somewhere to go as it's being driven out. I put just enough dots on the far end to keep it from spreading apart when heat was applied. And hopefully, with any luck, as I build some core heat here, I'm going to get it squeezed together and drive out the air through the bottom. Another thing that probably worth noting, I'm going to get it back on center. Another thing that's worth noting, normally when I'm doing a square or triangle assembly, I try to keep, at this point in the operation, I would have switched to handwork because I'd be trying to keep the, focus the heat on the sides and not focus the heat on the corners. On this piece, I'm going to be turning the square into a circle because I think it kind of might be fun. So now I'm in a reverse direction. I'm getting a little twist. I think it might be fun to see how this pattern flows. This pattern is all about watching the glass flow, and I'm going to see. It was originally a square which got squeezed into a triangle. Then the triangles are squeezed together into a square, and then the whole thing will be squeezed and coerced into a round, which gives two opportunities for the glass to flow, and hopefully it flows in cool ways. So, into the squeezer. I'm trying to also elongate the piece a little bit. Because I was aiming with my previous pull, I was aiming to get enough material to make 4 3¼ inch pieces, and I ended up with only enough yield, or actually to make 4 3¼ inch pieces. And I ended up with only enough yield to make 4 2½ inch pieces. And means that I need to elongate this dude a little bit, which is no problem. It's going to be pulled anyway. Concentrating the heat on the end, and looks like I might have a tiny little bubble. I'm not sure it's worth trying to, I don't currently have the skill to pull it out without making a mess. Something I'm going to need to learn how to do. standing on the squeezer. So that seems reasonably well consolidated. So now I'm going to soak some more heat into the core. Now I'm going to see if I can coerce it into a round shape. Hopefully that little bubble won't cause me too much trouble as time goes on. And I'm going to be using the flat fixed dies to kind of like knock the corner off, knock the four corners off simultaneously, kind of turn it into a rough octagon, and then finish the shaping into a circle by hand. Of course, just simply heating it while rotating results in some corner rounding. Trying to be careful, since the pattern is all made of fairly sensitive colors, trying to be fairly careful to not overheat the surface as I'm attempting to build core heat. Very careful here. I'm going to try to do as slow as I can. Okay, well, the pesky bubble popped, but now it's a giant hole, so oh well. Let's see what it comes out. I bet I'll still get a lot of useful material. But this has been always a challenge in making these pieces. Air bubbles come from multiple different sources. Sometimes the color rod has air entrapped in it. Sometimes a bubble comes from boiling the glass. And sometimes a bubble comes from assembling and trapping air. So there we go. somewhat more circularized. Back on center. And just very gently, trying to avoid twist. And a little bit just working from one end to the other, trying to see if I can maybe close up that bubble. Not sure what I'm going to do with that guy. Reversing direction on the NQALHA to get the twist under control. It appears to be coming out reasonably well. Reversing direction again. If maybe a little bit of, oh yeah, a little bit of concentrated small flame is closing up the pesky bubble. And of course now the piece has gotten all droopy. Seems like every time I do this, I learn a different way to make a mistake. And sometimes, if I'm lucky, a different way to correct a mistake. Well, what do you know? I think I closed up that bubble. Of course, the pattern is probably going to be boogered at the place where the bubble was, but so this is the part of the process where it's all handwork from now on. Well, actually not completely. I'll put it back in the NQALHA for just general assistance, but the squeezing is done. I'm doing the final rounding by hand. Got fairly good control of twist. The pattern does have some visible lines on it, so I have a bit of a visual reference. It'll be very interesting to see, because I've got two changes in geometry going. Squeezing a square into a triangle, assembling the triangles together, and then squeezing a square into a round. It'll be very interesting to see. Well, almost round enough. It'll be interesting to see how the glass flows and if any kind of cool, unexpected patterns result. And that is probably round enough. And it's got a little twist in it, but I'm not going to get concerned. Got my pre-made puller here. Someday I'll probably learn to pull on the NQALHA, but at the moment I do pulling by hand. Nice big moil. I'm not sure you call the end of a puller a moil, but Oh well, whatever it is, it's nice and big. And now, I'm going to get Mr. NQALHA out of the way. Using 20 mil glass rods because they give me a little more control. So the end that I welded is going to be hot, and if I keep heating it, it's going to get too hot. So got to be real careful about where I apply my heat because, yeah, the moil on the right is starting to pull away in a way I don't want. So I'm going to let it cool for a moment. Concentrate my heat on the left side. Being very aware of twist, even though I'm not sure it really matters that much, but still developing my pulling technique. Letting it cool and stabilize a little bit. Well, that is the diameter that I'm going for. I'm still maintaining really good straightness. Maybe I'm getting better at this, I don't know. Maybe I'm getting better at this. I don't want to overheat my moil, but I want to get this knuckle under control, so switching to a smaller flame. Okay. Get out the diamond shears. And that is the piece. I think I'm getting a little better at this. So, that concludes today's glasswork, and as always, thank you for watching. It's been fun.